I used to think monsters didn't start a story. Roads did. That day it was asphalt, long miles, and a Dollar General coffee that tasted like boiled paper towels but kept my eyes open. The clerk called me Han. The sign buzzed, and I got back in my rental to keep driving. My GPS line kept dragging me farther into the mountains, past the last gas station, past the last flicker of cell service. Bars vanished one by one until my phone sat dead in my pocket. The road turned cruel. Asphalt gave way to gravel, gravel to dirt, dirt to a narrow path that didn't look like it deserved to be called a road. The trees leaned in close, branches brushing the roof like fingers. $50 a night, 3 bedrooms, rustic luxury, mountain view. The air bump sounded like a scam dressed up as a miracle. Then the road bent around a slab of rock like a giant's knuckle, and the trees opened. The cabin stood on the slope as if it had been waiting for me. It was beautiful, too beautiful, honey-colored logs catching the sunlight, a porch with rocking chairs, windows tall and clean reflecting the forest in perfect rectangles. The lawn was mowed sharp all the way to the trees. I parked under a wagon wheel painted "Welcome, y'all." Found the key in a tin can under the second step. The door latch was heavy, farm style, and it groaned open to let me in. Lemon cleaner and old wood hit me in the face. The fireplace was stacked stone, a deer mount staring down with coal for eyes. A leather sectional sprawled across the room. The kitchen gleamed with granite counters and stainless steel appliances. The master bedroom held a bed so wide you could lose yourself sideways with a bathroom polished in marble. All of it for $50. No way. I unpacked, set up my laptop, and joined the Wi-Fi. The network name was Whitlow Guest. The password was Pray Harder. I smirked, figured it was some weird religious humor, and got to work. Hours slipped by in progress bars, code, and the warm glow of the sinking sun. And then the Wi-Fi died. The icon went dark. I rebooted, toggled, cursed. Nothing. With my phone light, I stepped outside, tracing the cable along the siding. That's when my blood ran cold. The sheath had been shredded, not chewed, not frayed, raked open. 4 deep grooves cut straight through the plastic into copper. The siding bore the same scars, claw marks. I backed toward the porch, heart hammering. That's when I saw the paper taped to the front glass, 2 sheets, corners fixed with blue painter's tape. Across the top, bold and underlined, "View ASAP." Inside, under the kitchen light, I smoothed them out. To whoever finds this, I am sorry for what comes next. You may not survive the next 48 hours. If you want a chance, follow the rules. This cabin is not what it seems. It was built for travelers like you. A debt collected every year since miners unearthed something they should not have. You are part of the payment now. Read carefully. Then came the rules, 16 of them. Don't step off the lawn after dark. Keep continuous light. If the power fails, reset the breaker past the split rail fence, not the gravel path. Board every window. Sleep only from 10 a.m. to noon. It will come 2 to 3 hours after you read this. Prepare. Lock doors. Do not barricade them. And stranger ones. Shoes by the door, voices in the pantry. The deer skull on the mantel must face the front. I laughed, shaky and thin, crumpled the papers and tossed them into the cold fireplace. Some sick prank, but unease stayed crawling under my ribs. I grabbed my duffel, decided $50 wasn't worth it. The truck disagreed. The back tire sagged. Then I saw the others, every one of them slashed clean open. I yanked the hood and stared at ruin. Wires shredded, bolts torn out, oil dripping fresh. The metal block itself was gouged, 4 deep claw marks raked through steel. And that's when it screamed. Not human, not animal, both twisted, stretched. A chorus of bones snapping in a throat that had never belonged to anything living. The sound rolled out of the trees and rattled my chest until my knees almost buckled. The rules, my mind clawed for them, board the windows, supplies in the basement. I stumbled back inside, to the master closet, suitcases shoved aside. The trap door. The knob stuck, turned on the third try, and the air that rose was damp, sour, wrong. My light carved a path down the stairs, concrete walls sweating. A workbench with jars of screws, a neat stack of lumber, and in the far corner, a body, collapsed half-eaten by time. The belly ripped open, one arm gone, eyes staring nothing. I gagged, stumbled backward, nearly tripped on the stairs. Slammed the trap door shut with shaking hands. The letter hadn't lied. Back in the living room, I tore the crumpled pages open, smoothed them flat with trembling hands. Read again. Board the windows. Prepare before it comes. My phone said 10:02. And then the sound came. 3 knocks, heavy, slow, from the front door. Not the friendly tap of a neighbor. This was weight, deliberate. A thing with patience standing inches away. The rules whispered at me, the 4th knock is a lie. And I stood frozen in the middle of the cabin, hammer clenched in my hand, listening to the silence stretch thin, waiting for the lie to come. The knock stopped. Silence stretched through the cabin like a second skin. I stood there, hammer sweating in my grip, staring at the door and wondering if my heart was pounding loud enough for whatever was outside to hear. When nothing came, I forced myself to move. The paper shook in my hand, creased and damp from sweat, but the words burned clear. Board every window. The glass is a door for it, not for you. So I started working. The basement smelled like rot and rust, but it held what I needed. Boards stacked like coffins, nails in a coffee can, a hammer that felt too light for the job. I carried up as much as I could, shoulder burning with the weight, throat dry as dust. Measure, saw, nail. The rhythm became a lifeline. I laid each board across the glass and drove nails until my arm throbbed. 1 window, 2, 3. Each slam of metal into wood pushed back the night, if only a little. The cabin shrank. Light from the lamps pressed against the walls but couldn't escape anymore. Every window I sealed made the air feel thicker. Trapped. Between boards, I mapped the house in my head. The living room too open. The kitchen too many doors. Hallway with 2 closets. Master bedroom at the end with that damn trap door. I checked every corner, every drawer, desperate for something else I could use. In the second closet down the hall, I found a cardboard box. My chest jumped when I pulled it open. Inside were bullets, 223 Remington rounds, a full box printed with a buck leaping across a field. Relief lasted 3 seconds, then dread hit harder. The rules echoed in my skull. If you find ammo before the rifle, you're on its route. Reverse any room you entered. I froze. The closet smelled of dust and cedar. The box of bullets sat heavy in my palm, but there was no rifle, which meant the house was already playing with me. I backed out of the closet, step by slow step, until I was in the hallway again. My breathing sounded too loud. I shoved the bullets into my bag anyway because, rules or not, steel was steel and maybe I'd get lucky. That's when I heard it, a whisper. It came from the pantry off the kitchen, soft, urgent, like someone trying not to be overheard. I crept closer, ears straining until I could make out words. My name. It said my name. Not once. Again and again, my mother's voice pleading. Noah, please, I'm hungry, I'm so hungry. Feed me, Noah. The paper burned in my mind. Voices in the pantry are not hungry. Don't feed them your name. I staggered back, hand clamped over my mouth. The whispering rose into a hiss, then faded into silence as if it had never been there. I tried to focus on my work, measure, saw, nail, but my arms shook harder with every strike. My sweat stung my eyes. Every board I put up felt like a promise that wouldn't hold. Then from above it came. Laughter. Not human laughter, not even close. It started as a low chuckle, then stretched long and sharp, vibrating through the rafters. The sound slid down the walls and into my bones like the whole cabin had turned into a throat. The rules: if it laughs, drop flat, cover your ears. The laugh takes things. I didn't hesitate. I fell to the floor, pressed my palms over my ears until pain bloomed in my skull. The laugh scraped across me like claws on glass. I could feel it tugging, pulling, like it wanted to peel something off me I couldn't name. When it finally stopped, I opened my wallet with trembling hands. The photo of my parents. Their faces were gone. 2 gray smears stared back at me. I wanted to scream, but there was no sound left in me. That's when the lights flickered, once, twice, and then darkness swallowed the cabin whole. The refrigerator fell silent. The lamps died. The hum of the house cut to nothing. Through the slats of the boards, the night pressed in. The rules echoed: if power fails, reset the breaker past the split rail fence, not the gravel path. The breaker was outside, past the lawn, past the tree line, and I knew, with the silence crawling closer, that I had to make a choice. The dark wasn't empty, it pressed. It crawled into the cabin through every seam, made the boards over the windows feel like paper. My phone screen glowed faint in my hand, the only light left. The rules pulsed in my head: if power fails, reset the breaker past the split rail fence, not the gravel path. I didn't want to go. Every bone in my body begged me to stay inside, but the air was already heavy with it. Without light, the house wouldn't hold. I stepped to the back door, hand on the knob. The glass above it reflected my face in a ghost smear. My pulse beat so hard in my ears I almost didn't hear the sound outside. Branches shifting, low breathing, something circling. The rules said stay on the lawn, so I opened the door and forced myself into the night. The grass was damp under my shoes, mown neat, and it glowed silver in the weak moonlight. Beyond it, the tree line crouched like an army waiting for the signal. I hummed, the only song I could think of, Amazing Grace. My voice shook, but the melody kept me upright. I counted steps with the beat. 1, 2, 3. The cabin loomed behind me, warm light gone, nothing but a black box nailed shut against the dark. The fence stood ahead, gray ribs rising from the ground, breaker box squatting just beyond it. 8, 9, 10. I kept humming, throat dry, the words ghosting out of me. 11, 12. On 13, I froze. The rules had warned about 13. If you hit 13 steps, run. But the grass still stretched empty, fence only a few paces away. I forced my feet forward anyway, breath catching. That's when I heard him, my dad's voice. Low, rough, the way it sounded on his old CB radio. Noah, hold up, son. I stopped cold, every muscle locked. My father was dead 3 years now. Come on, boy, you're going the wrong way. The voice came from the dark edge of the trees. I wanted to look, but the paper's warning pinned me in place. Don't look back when you hear your name. I swallowed, forced myself to keep humming. My steps carried me to the fence, each one heavier than the last. The breaker box crouched in the shadows, metal slick with dew. My hand found the reset button, a round piece of plastic cool beneath my thumb. I pressed. A pop echoed, then a low hum filled the box. Across the yard, The cabin blinked alive, warm orange glow spilling through cracks in the boards, appliances humming again. Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. That's when I saw them. On the roof of the cabin above the glow, two orange embers opened, eyes fixed on me. They didn't blink, they didn't move, just burned, steady and hateful, watching me in the dark. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My voice died in my throat. For a heartbeat the world held still, me and the eyes locked across the yard. Then they slid backward, slow, disappearing over the far slope of the roof. The silence that followed was worse than their gaze. I bolted, stumbling across the lawn back to the door, slamming it shut and twisting the lock with shaking hands. Inside, the lights hummed soft and steady. The refrigerator clicked back on. The microwave beeped like nothing had ever happened. But my heart knew better. Something out there had seen me, and it hadn't been in any hurry to leave. The house hummed again, steady and ordinary, like nothing had happened. The refrigerator clicked. The lamps glowed soft yellow. The microwave beeped its little victory tune, but I couldn't shake what I'd seen. Those eyes, watching me from the roof, not rushing, not chasing, just watching. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing too fast, staring at the door as if it might split open. That's when I heard it. A sound, small, from the pantry. At first it was just the shift of wood, like a shelf settling. Then it grew, a scrape, a whisper, words curling low and wet through the cracks. "Noah," my name again, my mother's voice. "Noah, I'm right here, open up, please." The rules were clear. Voices in the pantry are not hungry, don't feed them your name. I backed away, palms slick. The whisper stretched into a hiss, then laughter, high, thin, wrong. The pantry door shuddered once, rattled in its frame, then stilled. I turned to run, but the air changed before I could move. A glow spilled across the living room floor. Orange, pulsing like light through fire. The boards over the windows didn't let light in. This glow came from inside. I froze, my throat closed. The sound of wood creaking filled the silence, long and heavy, like something dragging its weight across the floorboards. Then I saw it. It stepped from the hallway into the edge of the light. 8 feet tall, easy. A body soaked in tar, fur clinging to muscles that swelled and twitched like ropes. It walked low, front claws long and hooked, arms dragging against the floor. Its head, God, its head. A deer skull, yellowed and cracked, antlers broken in jagged spikes. And from its sockets, two orbs of fire, orange and furious, casting shadows that bent and twisted across the walls. It turned, slow, deliberate, the way a predator studies prey that has nowhere left to run. The embers of its eyes pinned me, peeled me open, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It didn't rush, didn't leap. It only tilted its skull, letting the light fall full on me as though it wanted me to know, I see you. Then just as sudden it laughed, low, long, cruel. The sound bent the air, rattled the boards, shook the pictures on the walls. I dropped flat, palms pressed over my ears, teeth grinding from the pressure. The laugh poured over me, taking something with it. I could feel memory slipping, something personal torn loose. When it ended, I looked around, dizzy, unable to even remember what I'd forgotten. By the time I dared to look up, it was gone. The hallway stood empty, the glow faded, only the steady hum of the house remained. I lay there gasping, staring at the ceiling until my vision steadied. Then I pushed myself up, legs trembling. Something caught my eye. In the guest bedroom, just beyond the open door under the bed, a shape. I crawled closer, heart pounding, and reached under. My fingers brushed cold metal, rough wood. I pulled it out. A rifle, old, dusty, the stock heavy in my hands. And for the first time that night, I felt the smallest spark of hope. Morning light leaked in thin strips between the boards I'd nailed across the windows. I hadn't realized how badly I wanted to see it until that moment, the blue-gray sliver of dawn spilling across the floorboards like a promise. The rules whispered again, 10:00 a.m. to 12:00 p.m. are the only hours you're safe. Use them to sleep. My hands shook as I cleaned the rifle. The old bolt action was scarred with scratches, dust caked in its grooves. When I slid the chamber open, it felt stiff, reluctant. I checked the box of ammunition I'd found, 2 rounds only, rattling in the cardboard like coins in an empty jar. Not enough. Nowhere near enough. Still, I loaded them in, pushed the bolt forward, felt the weight settle in my arms. The rifle leaned against the wall as I collapsed onto the couch, my body finally buckling under exhaustion. I told myself I'd close my eyes for a few minutes, just until the clock struck 10. The hum of the refrigerator steadied me. The faint chirp of birds outside reminded me that morning still existed. Safe hours, that was the deal, so I let myself drift. The dream came fast. I was standing outside the cabin, barefoot, the grass cold under my feet. The forest pressed closer than before, trunks leaning inward like a cage. The cabin behind me glowed, every window lit gold, but when I tried to step back toward it, my legs wouldn't move. Something stood between me and the door, tall, still. A silhouette crowned with broken antlers. It didn't move, it didn't need to. Its eyes burned through the dark like 2 coals pulled fresh from a fire pit. I tried to speak. My voice cracked, low, unfamiliar. The words that came out weren't mine. "I'll stay." The thing tilted its skull, slow and deliberate. The forest around me shuddered, leaves trembling without wind. The grass at my feet thickened, rooting me deeper, holding me there. Then the ground opened. The lawn split into jagged seams, soil crumbling away to reveal blackness underneath. Not dirt, not stone, just void, endless. The creature leaned closer, its skull filling the sky. I could see every crack in the bone, every jagged edge of its shattered antlers. It opened its jaws, and inside was nothing but fire. The sound that followed wasn't a laugh. It was my name, torn apart and put back together wrong. I woke gasping. The couch pressed against my back, sweat sticking my shirt to the cushions. My phone screen glowed on the table. 11:59 a.m. 1 safe hour gone, 1 left. The rifle leaned where I'd left it, dust still clinging to the stock. But the photo of my parents, the one in my wallet, lay open on the floor. I picked it up with shaking hands. The faces were still gone. Only the gray smears stared back at me. My safe hours had given me nothing but a nightmare, and I understood something then. The creature didn't rest at sunrise. It waited. It watched. And even in daylight, it had ways of reaching me. The clock blinked past noon and the safe hours ended. The weight of it fell heavy in the room, like the air itself knew the deal was over. I sat on the couch, rifle across my lap, eyes burning from a sleep that hadn't helped. The nightmare still clung to me, crawling behind my eyelids every time I blinked. I spent the afternoon pacing the cabin. Every board, every nail, I checked them twice. My palms brushed each window frame, listening for any tremor from outside. The rules had said the windows were the weakest point, and the wood I'd nailed felt like the only thread keeping me inside this world. By dusk, the forest outside was alive again. Birds fell silent. Crickets started, then stopped as though cut off mid-song. The tree line looked closer than it had that morning, shadows stretching farther than they should. I ate dry cereal straight from the box and kept the rifle by my side. Every creak in the boards made me flinch. Every groan of the cabin's old frame sounded like claws dragging closer. When the last light drained out of the sky, it started. 3 knocks. This time at the back door. Heavy, slow, as deliberate as before. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The paper had warned me. The 4th knock is a lie. A silence stretched long, then came the sound of nails scraping across the wood. The back door shuddered in its frame, paint cracking under the strain. My hands clenched tighter around the rifle, but I didn't fire. Not yet. The scraping stopped, and then the laughter came. Low, bubbling, cruel. It rolled across the ceiling beams, shook the walls, rattled the dishes in the cupboards. I dropped flat to the floor, palms over my ears, teeth clenched so hard my jaw screamed. The laugh pressed against me, pressed through me, tugging at memory. When it faded, I dug into my wallet with shaking hands. The photo had changed again. Now it was blank. No faces, no shapes, not even gray smears, just white like paper never touched by ink. My stomach lurched. I pressed the photo back into my pocket like it might anchor me, and I forced myself upright. That's when I heard the sound, not knocks, not laughter, breathing. It came from the hallway guest room, heavy, steady just beyond the door. My skin went cold as ice. The boards on that window had been the last ones I nailed. My gut twisted with the certainty that I'd missed something. I edged down the hallway, rifle shaking in my hands, breath caught in my throat. The guest room door stood half open, a thin strip of dark spilling into the hall. I nudged it with the barrel of the gun. The smell hit first, damp earth, tar, burnt hair, then the sound of wood cracking, splinters snapping. Something inside the room was pushing through the window frame. I raised the rifle, sweat dripping into my eyes, and the boards creaked again. One more shove and they'd snap. The fire in my chest turned to steel as I pulled the stock tight against my shoulder. And then, from the dark inside, 2 orange eyes blinked open. The eyes burned in the dark, fixed on me through the cracked boards of the guest room window. They glowed hotter with every second, orange bleeding into the wood like embers dropped on dry pine. My body moved before my brain could argue. I shouldered the rifle, sighted on the glow, and squeezed. The shot tore through the house, deafening, the recoil slamming my shoulder. Smoke curled in the narrow hall. For a second, hope sparked. I thought I'd hit it. But the eyes didn't dim. They flinched, just barely, then brightened. And then I saw it, movement, slow and deliberate, the thing drawing closer, pressing its skull against the boards until splinters fell to the floor. I chambered the second round with hands slick with sweat. My breath hitched. I fired again. The blast shook the room. The smell of gunpowder stung my nose. The boards cracked wider, and I saw the edge of its skull, yellow bone, cracked antler. But still it didn't fall. It staggered back half a step, then laughed. The sound started low, rumbling in its chest, and swelled until the walls of the cabin seemed to bend with it. My ears rang, my skull throbbed, and I dropped to the floor again, palms clamped over my head. The laugh stripped something from me. I knew at the moment I clawed my wallet open. The photo was still there, but this time my parents' faces weren't even shapes anymore. Just a blank rectangle, as if they'd never existed. I shook, rage and terror churning until I could barely breathe. When I dared to look up, the eyes were gone. The boards hung splintered, smoke drifting through the cracks. The silence that followed was worse than the laugh, heavy, final. I sat in the hallway, rifle empty, hands trembling so hard I thought I might drop it. The thing hadn't killed me. It hadn't even forced its way in. It was playing, letting me waste what little I had left. And I realized then the rules weren't just instructions. They were a reminder. This wasn't a fight. It was a game. And the mountain wanted me to lose slowly. Midnight came like a blade. The cabin, already small with its boarded windows, seemed to fold tighter on itself as the night thickened. I sat in the living room with the empty rifle across my lap, my hands shaking each time the house settled, each groan of wood a reminder of how thin these walls were. The silence didn't last. First came the scrape, claws dragging along the siding. Then the heavy thud of weight against the back wall, the boards shivering in their nails. I backed away, breath caught in my throat. The sound circled the house, steps pounding slow and heavy, dragging in places as if it wanted me to know how patient it could be. Then came the knock, this time not three but one, hard enough to rattle the cabinets in the kitchen. I froze. My eyes darted to the paper on the table, the rules burned into me now. I whispered them under my breath like a prayer. Then the glass shattered. The sound knifed through the cabin. Boards splintered, nails groaned. From the guest room came a crash, wood tearing, shards spilling across the floor. It was inside. The house went still, listening with me. The air turned thick, heavy with its breath. A slow, guttural growl rolled down the hallway. I bolted. My legs carried me before my brain caught up, past the kitchen, straight for the pantry. The rules screamed, if it breaches, hide. The pantry will hold if you keep silent. The double doors creaked as I pulled them shut behind me. The darkness was suffocating, the smell of old spices and wood dust choking my lungs. I pressed my back against the shelves, shaking so hard the jars rattled. I clamped both hands over my mouth. The floorboards outside groaned. Heavy steps, slow, deliberate. It stopped just beyond the doors. I could see it through the sliver of crack, the faint orange glow spilling across the kitchen tiles, shifting as the skull tilted. It was standing there, inches away, firelight flickering from its eyes, bone-white antlers scraping the ceiling. The whisper came again, my name. This time not my mother's voice, my own, perfectly copied, broken with fear. Noah, let's trade places. My teeth dug into my palm to keep the scream inside. Tears blurred my eyes, hot and useless. The glow lingered. It tilted its head as if it knew exactly where I was, as if the rules weren't protection but bait. Then, with a slow rumble, it laughed. Not the booming laugh that stole memories. A quieter one, personal, as if it was saving me for later. The footsteps receded, heavy, moving deeper into the house. I stayed in the pantry, shaking in the dark, too terrified to move, too terrified to breathe, wondering if the rules had ever been meant to save me at all. The first light came not with relief, but with suspicion. I sat curled in the pantry until the glow crept between the cracks of the boards and the forest outside stirred awake. My body was stiff, my eyes burned, but I didn't dare move until the hum of morning filled the cabin again. Birds calling, wind in the trees, the distant rush of water. When I finally stepped out, the house looked wounded. The guest room window was a mess of splintered wood and broken glass. Shards glittered on the floor like teeth knocked from a jaw. I touched the boards I'd nailed, jagged, split, useless now. I whispered the rules again, 10 a.m. to noon, use those hours to rest. But I didn't trust them anymore. I ate dry cereal with trembling hands, staring at the rifle leaning empty against the wall. The 2 rounds I'd fired had done nothing but amuse it. The box of bullets rattled hollow, useless without the gun to match them. By the time the clock edged toward 10, exhaustion claimed me. My body dragged itself to the couch, eyes closing against my will. Sleep was not sleep. I dreamed I was walking down the hallway. The boards were intact again, windows whole, sunlight spilling warm across the floor. For a moment the house looked normal, almost welcoming. But the photographs on the wall, pictures I didn't remember ever seeing, were wrong. My parents, my brother, even me. Each face blurred, each frame smudged as if someone had rubbed their thumb hard across the glass. I turned into the master bedroom. The bed was made perfect. The closet stood open, suitcases neatly stacked. The trap door was gone. Where it should have been was only carpet, smooth, seamless. I knelt, pressed my hand against it. Something thumped back, hard. The sound rattled through my bones. I tried to pull away, but my palm stuck. The floor softened, rippled, turned black and wet beneath my touch. From below, voices rose, not whispers this time, but screams, dozens of them overlapping, begging. Then one cut through the rest. My own voice. "Stay asleep, Noah, don't wake up, it's worse when you wake up." I jolted upright on the couch, drenched in sweat, chest heaving. The living room was quiet, safe in the pale light of morning, or it should have been, because outside the boards I heard something impossible. Birds, yes, but their song wasn't right. Every call bent at the edges, cracked with distortion, like old tape playing too slow. Between them, faint whispers threaded the air. My name again, over and over, hidden under the song of the morning. I pressed my ear to the boards. The forest was speaking in two voices. And for the first time, I wondered if safe hours were safe at all, or if they were just another part of the game. By the time noon bled into afternoon, I knew I wouldn't find peace in daylight. The forest was too quiet, too watchful. The songs of the birds bent wrong in my ears, warped at the edges like voices buried inside them. So I did what I could. I went back to the rifle. It leaned against the wall where I had left it, dust clinging to the stock, the bolt stiff with age. My 2 shots were gone, wasted, but I still had the box of ammunition. A cruel joke, bullets that fit nothing, or a weapon that wouldn't kill. Still, the rifle was all I had that felt heavier than my hands. I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight bleeding through the cracks of the boards, and pulled the weapon apart piece by piece. The screws resisted, the metal groaned, but finally the rifle lay open across the wood. That's when I saw it. Carved into the underside of the stock, so faint it had almost vanished, were words. Scratched in by something sharp, hidden where no one would look. Only one shot matters. The letters were jagged, uneven, as though carved in haste or with a shaking hand. I ran my thumb over the grooves, heart hammering. Only one shot matters. I lifted the stock closer to the light, searching for more, and that's when a slip of paper, brittle and yellowed, slid free from the hollow beneath the butt plate. It was folded so small I almost tore it opening it. Inside were just a few lines, cramped and desperate. "It doesn't die. Don't waste your rounds. The eye takes it back, but if you miss, it laughs longer. Don't give it reason to laugh." My hands trembled, my stomach twisted. The first 2 shots I'd fired, chest, skull, had done nothing but make it stronger. But the eye, I saw again in my mind the way those fiery orbs had fixed on me through the cracks, steady and unblinking. The way they had burned brighter after each bullet. If the message was right, I had one chance left, one shot that mattered, and if I missed, the laugh would take more than just a photograph. I pressed the paper flat on the table, staring at the words until they blurred. Somebody before me had tried. Somebody before me had failed. And their warning had survived them. The note sat on the kitchen table, its edges curled and brittle, the words burned into me. Only one shot matters. The eye takes it back. One chance. No second try. I loaded the rifle with shaking hands, sliding a single round into the chamber. The bolt locked forward with a heavy click that seemed to echo too loud in the empty cabin. I held the stock against my shoulder, aiming down the hallway at nothing, practicing the motion, steadying my breath, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The deer skull, cracked antlers, tar-soaked fur, and those eyes, twin fires burning through every shadow. How was I supposed to meet that stare and not fall apart? How was I supposed to hit one of them when just looking too long felt like drowning? The silence pressed heavier as night crawled closer. I could feel it waiting. Then the sound came. Laughter. It rolled across the rafters, shaking dust loose from the beams, crawling down the walls until the floor vibrated under my feet. I dropped flat, hands clamped over my ears, the rifle slipping from my grasp. The laugh bent the air, peeled at my memory. When it stopped, I scrambled for my wallet, heart hammering. The photo had changed again. Now it was blank. No faces, no shapes, not even gray smears, just white like paper never touched by ink. I wanted to scream, but the pantry whispered first. My name, this time in my own voice. "Noah, you won't make it, you never make it, give me the rifle, let me aim for you." The doors rattled as though something inside wanted out. The whisper grew frantic, layered, my voice overlapping itself in a dozen pitches. I staggered back, clutching the rifle to my chest, sweat running down my spine, my throat locked. Then silence fell again, not peace, silence that listened. I lifted the rifle, aiming toward the pantry doors, breath shaking. The boards creaked overhead, slow, measured, as if something enormous was crawling across the roof. And then light, two orange flames. But this time they weren't outside. They burned from the corner of the living room, inside the cabin. The skull stepped into view, antlers scraping the ceiling, the fire of its eyes fixed straight on me. The glow froze me where I stood. Two burning eyes hovered in the corner of the living room, just above the rim of the couch, steady and merciless. My hands clenched the rifle so tight my knuckles cracked. The skull tilted, antlers scraping grooves into the ceiling beams as it stepped forward. Each claw sank into the floorboards with a weight that rattled dishes in the cupboards. Tar dripped from its fur, hissing when it touched the wood. I raised the rifle. The barrel wavered, caught between my shaking hands and the pull of those eyes. The bolt was locked, one round chambered, the shot. But the words carved into the stock burned in my mind. Only one shot matters. The eye, only the eye. It came closer. My breath hitched. I steadied my aim on the glowing socket, finger curling against the trigger. And then it laughed. Not the booming laugh that stole memories. A quieter one, slow, measured, as if it knew, as if it was daring me. My finger froze. Sweat dripped into my eyes, blurring the glow. I couldn't risk it not shaking like this. If I missed, I knew what the note had said. It would laugh longer. The thing leaned closer. The deer skull filled my vision, the fire in its socket so bright it painted the room in orange. My reflection flickered in its bones, small, broken, already dead. I swallowed a scream, pulled the rifle back an inch. It stopped, tilted its skull again as if mocking me. Then, with a guttural growl that rattled the walls, it stepped backward into the shadows. The glow dimmed, shrinking, then vanished altogether. The silence that followed was unbearable. I lowered the rifle, arms trembling, chest heaving, and then I saw it. Carved deep into the wood of the floor where it had stood, 3 claw marks, burned black at the edges. Beneath them, gouged into the boards with deliberate precision, were 2 words. One left. Evening sank slow, thick as tar. The cabin's boards groaned with each cooling gust of air, like the house itself knew what was coming. I sat at the table with the rifle across my knees, staring at the words burned into the floorboards. One left. It had written to me. The rules had said nothing about that. I whispered them under my breath anyway, clinging to the memory of ink on paper. Don't step off the lawn after dark. Prioritize lights. Safe hours, 10 to noon. But every line felt weaker now, like a prayer spoken to an empty church. By the time the last light drained from the tree line, the cabin was steeped in dark. The lamps buzzed faintly, shadows stretching long across the walls. My heart beat in the silence, fast and uneven. Then the noises began. First a scrape along the boards, then a knock hollow on the roof beams. Then whispers, too many, overlapping, crawling through the cracks in the wood. Somewhere deep in the kitchen, my own voice called out, "Noah, noon is safe." I froze, stomach lurching. The voice came again, louder. "Noon is safe, Noah, come see." I staggered toward the sound before I realized what I was doing. My hand was on the pantry door, ready to pull it open when my eyes caught the clock on the microwave. 10:04 p.m. The rules had never said anything about safe hours at night. The laugh spilled from the rafters, low and pleased, vibrating through the walls. I dropped to the floor, hands clamped over my ears, but even through the pressure I could hear the words woven into the laugh. Rules bend, rules break. The sound pressed harder until my vision blurred. When it stopped, I scrambled upright, gasping. The cabin was quiet again, too quiet. I forced myself back to the table, hands trembling, and that's when I saw it. The papers. The rules I'd crumpled and smoothed so many times. They lay spread across the wood where I'd left them. Only now the lines had changed. The ink bled, words crossed out, new ones scratched jagged across the page. Safe hours, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Don't trust daylight. Dawn should have been a blessing. For the first time since I'd stepped foot into the cabin, I wanted nothing more than to see the color of morning through the cracks in the boards, to feel the air shift from cold black to thin blue. But when the clock ticked past 7:00, nothing changed. The boards stayed dark. The house hummed low, hollow, as if the walls themselves were waiting for me to notice. I staggered to the nearest window, pried up one of the nailed planks just enough to peer through. My chest froze. The world outside wasn't mourning. The trees stood still, too still, their branches black against a sky that should have been pale. The air beyond the boards looked thick, syrupy, as though daylight hadn't arrived at all. And then I understood. The rules had bent. Now they were broken. I tried to steady myself at the table, the rifle heavy across my knees. My hands ached from clenching it too hard. I looked at the paper again, the words I had memorized until they were carved into me. Safe hours, 10 a.m. to noon, but the page no longer said that. The ink bled into new lines, letters crawling like ants across the surface. Safe hours, none. I crumpled the page, crushed it in my fists, but the words burned anyway, searing into my mind. The laugh came next. Not from the rafters this time, not from the walls, from outside under the false morning. It was different, low, patient, like someone humming to themselves while sharpening a blade. The sound crawled over the lawn, pressed through the boards, and coiled inside my chest. I pressed my hands over my ears but still heard it, still felt it stripping something away. When it stopped, I pulled my wallet out with shaking hands. The photo was gone. Not blank, not gray. Gone. Only the empty square of paper remained, as though no picture had ever been there at all. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat, and that's when I saw it. In the crack between the boards, a faint glow. Not sunlight. Orange, flickering. Two burning eyes stared back at me through the slats, unblinking, fixed. Daylight hadn't come, and the rules were dead. The glow in the cracks never left. It pressed steady, burning into the boards, a reminder that the rules were gone, that daylight itself had been stolen from me. I clutched the rifle to my chest, staring at the paper I had crushed in my fist. Safe hours, none. There was nowhere left. No more comfort in the morning. No more walls strong enough to matter. Except the basement. The thought came like a whisper, not from the pantry, not from the rafters, but from my own exhaustion. If I couldn't trust the house, maybe I could bury myself deeper. The trapdoor groaned as I dragged the suitcases aside. My hand lingered on the knob, slick with sweat. Every part of me screamed not to go down there again, not where the smell of rot clung to the walls, not where I had seen the first body slumped in the corner. But the boards upstairs were cracking. Splinters rained down the hallway. A low growl pulsed through the wood. I opened the door and went down. The air was colder than before, heavier. My phone's flashlight cut through webs that hung thick as curtains. Dust rose with each step, clogging my throat. The first body was still there, half hidden under the rug I had thrown across it out of pity, but it wasn't alone. I swung the light across the concrete and froze. There were more. 3, maybe 4, slumped against the far wall. Skin blackened, clothes torn, tools still clutched in skeletal hands. A hammer, a bent screwdriver, a kitchen knife rusted dark. One had boards stacked beside him, nails scattered across the floor as if he had died in the middle of building his barricade. The walls themselves told their story. Carved deep into the concrete, desperate hands had left messages, overlapping each other in scratches that barely formed words. Don't trust the hours. IT takes voices first. The laugh is a knife. One eye, one chance. My breath came ragged, fogging the beam of light. My legs shook. I pressed my palm against the wall, against the last set of words carved deeper than the rest. If you're reading this, IT knows. The growl above deepened. Dust rained from the ceiling as something massive pressed against the trapdoor. Wood strained, hinges squealed. And then 3 knocks, slow, heavy, directly above me. I raised the rifle, chest heaving, and pointed it at the ceiling, finger on the trigger, praying I wouldn't waste the only shot that mattered. The 3 knocks rattled the trapdoor. Slow, deliberate, like it wasn't asking to come in, it was reminding me it already owned the house. Dust fell in thin streams. The hinges groaned. Then came the scrape of claws dragging along the wood, gouging deep lines into the grain. I braced the rifle against my shoulder, sight fixed on the ceiling, breath catching on every creak. My pulse roared so loud it drowned the silence. The door exploded inward. Splinters rained down as the trapdoor wrenched open, wood snapping like bones. The glow filled the stairwell, orange and searing, and then it descended. The skull bent low to fit through the frame, antlers scraping sparks off the edges. Tar dripped from its fur, splattering across the steps. Its eyes burned hotter than I'd ever seen, as if they knew this was the end. I aimed. The barrel wavered, sweat slicking my hands. My finger curled against the trigger. The laugh came, rolling through the basement, shaking the walls. My ears screamed, memory tearing away with it, but I held my aim. The words carved into the stock burned inside me. Only one shot matters. I pulled the trigger. The blast tore through the basement. The recoil slammed into my shoulder. The round punched straight into the right socket. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then the glow flared blinding white. The creature shrieked, a sound so sharp the concrete cracked. Tar boiled off its body, flames roaring from the ruined socket. It staggered, slammed against the wall, brought half the shelves down with its thrashing. The laugh curdled into a scream. And then silence. Smoke coiled through the basement. The skull sagged forward, cracked antlers burying themselves into the concrete floor. The fire in its remaining eye sputtered, dimmed, then went out. I collapsed, rifle falling from numb hands. My chest heaved, my ears rang, my whole body trembling with the weight of survival. But then, the laugh came back, soft, weak, but there. I forced my eyes open. On the wall above its slumped body, burned into the concrete by the last of its fire, were words forming letter by letter, smoke curling into shape. One game ends. Another begins. The skull cracked wide, smoke pouring from its ruined eye, and the basement filled with the stench of burning earth. I staggered toward the stairs, dragging myself into the ruined cabin above, choking on ash. The boards were gone, the windows open, the forest waiting. Dawn finally broke, pale and thin, across the lawn. But I knew better. The light didn't matter anymore, because the rules were gone, and the mountain wasn't finished with me.